One produces understanding and the other produces anxiety. I lost contact to the only real thing available to me. Before you could form a coherent sentence, you were already being measured. The real question is, why do we compare at all? I want to tell you about a boy in my school. He was my friend. We sat in the same classroom, studied the same syllabus, had the same teachers, and one day when the results came back, I looked at his paper and something shifted inside me. He had done better, significantly better, without appearing to study as much, without the visible struggle that I put in every evening. I remember sitting with that score in my hand, and the first thought was not about me, it was about him. How is he doing this? Has he found some shortcut I haven't? Or did he even study? That was not a thought about my abilities. Rather, you can put it like this. It was me who was evacuating myself. I stopped seeing what I was and started measuring the gap between what I was and what he was. I stopped living inside my own mind. I stopped observing myself and started living in a comparison, an imagination. And from that point, every time I sat down to study, I wasn't studying anymore. I was racing against a ghost, an image, trying to become something other than what I actually was. I did not understand then what I understand now. The suffering wasn't caused by his marks. It was caused by the fact that the moment I compared, I disappeared. I lost contact to the only real thing available to me, which was myself as I actually was right then. This video is about that disappearance because it does not stop at school results. A 29-year-old man sits in a meeting, watches his colleagues receive praise and feels the exact same evacuation. A 61-year-old in retirement, nothing left to chase, feels a low, hollow ache within himself. Instead of peace, spent his whole life running towards a door that doesn't even exist. 3 stages of a single life and the same movement underneath all of them. Not a failure, nor a weakness, not even a social media problem. Something structural, conditioned so early and so quietly that most people don't even notice that their whole life. They never consider to question it. They just live inside their entire life, giving it a tag of ambition, calling it drive, calling it standard. Now, let's get back to the main point. Here is what happens when you compare yourself to someone. You do not gather useful information, you don't get motivated. Even if you do get motivated, that is temporary. What actually happens is that the self-perception, the direct, honest awareness, what here actually is, gets replaced by a measurement, a gap or a verdict. And the gap always produces the same conclusion. This person in this moment is not enough. I lived it. I stopped being a student trying to understand things and became a student trying to fill that gap. Those are not the same activities. One produces understanding and the other produces anxiety. And when there is anxiety, your mind is spending most of its energy trying to combat that anxiety, trying to justify it, trying to justify your comparison to other. And you waste a whole lot of energy in that process instead of focusing on what is in front of you. Now, you tell me, who would perform better? The person who is drowned in anxiety, always worried that the other person is better than him and he must catch up to that person? Or the person who is genuinely interested in understanding, genuinely interested in study, no matter what the society has constructed. When I was in that situation of comparison, I did not study more intelligently. I studied more desperately. I imitated his style. I looked for the shortcut he must have found. The one thing that could have genuinely helped me, a clear, unobstructed look at what I actually needed, became impossible because that requires presence, and comparison destroys presence every single time. But here is where I have to stop and be honest, because some of you are already forming the objection. Comparison is not always destructive. Athletes compare themselves to the world records and push past their limits. Students compare their work to excellent examples and raise their standards. Without it, wouldn't we just stagnate? This is a serious argument and it deserves a serious answer. There is a distinction that completely changes the terms of the debate, the distinction between observation and measurement. And most people can't see the thin line between them, and that changes everything. Observation is when you look at something and see what there actually is, without any prejudice, without any conditioning, and even if something arises from conditioning, you observe that also and understand its true nature. A student who looks at their own work and sees without judgment is exactly where the argument weakens. That is clean and it produces intelligence, because your mind is not stuck in measurement here, and it is not wasting its energy in comparison. It's just observing, and the action arises itself from the observation. Measurement, on the other hand, is when you take what you see and immediately locate it on a scale relative to someone else. Not this is where I am weak, but this is how far I am from where I should be. And the moment measurement replaces observation, the ability to see yourself clearly is gone. Because now you are not looking at yourself, you are looking at a gap between you and an image that lives in your head, not in the reality. An image that shifts the moment you get close to it. When A is compared to B, who is clever and bright, that very comparison destroys A. The destruction takes a form of imitation or conforming to the patterns set by B. I was that A. I stopped being myself and started chasing B. I read this line somewhere, I could not remember the source. I will mention the source on the screen. It says, it is better to live your own life or destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else's life with perfection. You can get the score, the performance, the achievement, but you will be imitating, not growing, and most importantly, not free. Your whole life, your actions would be dependent on someone else, and the exhaustion of that, the kind that never fully lifts even after the achievements, is what every driven person who has not understood this carries inside them. So comparison is a symptom. The real question is, why do we compare at all? Not because of social media, not because of capitalism. The answer is older. The present self feels insufficient, incomplete, like a draft of something unfinished. That feeling did not arrive by accident in you. Before you could form a coherent sentence, you were already being measured. Is she walking yet? Is he talking yet? Why is he behind the others? School does not teach you mathematics and language primarily. School teaches you for more than a decade, without ever stating it directly, that the person you currently are is a problem to be solved and is incomplete, that the goal is somewhere in the future, that you must become something before you have the right to exist without apology. Kierkegaard called this deepest form of despair. Specific psychological act of looking at yourself and willing yourself away, choosing to be another than oneself. He argued that this was the defining sickness of the modern life, so common that the most people don't recognize it as a sickness. They have renamed it as personal development, because even self-improvement, the thing sold as the solution, can be the most sophisticated version of the same problem. Now, some of you will ask, then how will we know that we are not sufficient right now and we have to improve? The answer is rather quite simple and direct. By observation, by being aware of yourself, rather than being aware of a fantasy or an image or of the other person. When you are aware of yourself, the right action automatically comes up. You don't have to force yourself into something. You don't have to force discipline. When you have a greater thing in life to do, all the smaller things align themselves with that greater thing. Either those things will align themselves or will disappear completely. You don't have to force stop anything. When does a person become someone who cannot simply exist without measuring the distance between what they are and what they should be? Nobody schedules it. It just happens, with that gap installed inside them. A permanent verdict that the present self is not enough, that somewhere ahead, after enough striving, there will finally be a version of them that is allowed to rest. I was that boy in the classroom. I know what it feels like to stop seeing yourself and start seeing only the measurement. I know how quietly it happens, how completely it consumes you. When you look at yourself honestly, right now, are you actually seeing yourself, or are you only ever seeing the gap?